Welcome into the Believe in the Cowboys podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network, the network for professional podcasters. Paul Catalina alongside former Cowboys quarterback and punter Danny White. We're, of course, brought to you by Bet Online. And it's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the season. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest, the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive 100% welcome bonus. Take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th opener between the Super Bowl champion Bucks and Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. And oh man, that was a mouthful, Danny, but certainly thankful to the sponsor. This week was cut down day, and there weren't a lot of surprises with the roster. I would say the biggest one would be Cooper Rush over Garrett Gilbert, and they still have a lot of things they're going to do between now and next Thursday when they play the Bucks to flex around the roster. But your thoughts on Cooper Rush over Garrett Gilbert, and if that surprised you at all?
No, mostly because Garrett Gilbert just has not played at all. You have no information on any stats on him. He hasn't been able to play that much in the preseason. And Cooper Rush, I will tell you, every time he's gotten in a game, I have liked what he has done. Now, in the regular season, last year when he played, there were some struggles, but in the preseason, I've just said all along, I think this guy just needs to play, just needs more opportunities to play. And I think the Cowboys probably saw the same thing. Kellen and Mike probably saw the same thing I did in him and a guy that can come in and play and not get you beat, which means that the defense has got to step up. I mean, anytime you lose a starting quarterback and the backup has to come in, the defense has to step up more than anything. The defense, the running game, all of that. And so that's more a concern than Cooper Rush, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they did bring in Will Grier, I guess, as their, and you want to have as many quarterbacks, I think, available to you because of COVID and how this thing can change. But Will Grier, right now, not really going to be a factor because he's not going to know the offense in a week. So even if, right. So he's not really a factor. He's more of a long-term thing. With Cooper Rush, I really think the only thing that limits him is he's not, he doesn't have a Brett Favre rifle of an arm. He's not that kind of quarterback, but he clearly knows the system and knows the offense, and that's what you want for a guy who would have to be thrust into action and all of a sudden get starter reps if Dak Prescott gets hurt. You're not expecting him to be Dak, but you need him to be somebody who knows the offense well and can keep you within what you kind of want to do.
Yeah. And he's been in the system, been in the Cowboys locker room. Arm strength to me is about 19th on a list of the 20 most important qualities of a quarterback. So I'm not concerned about that. That's not, you learn as a quarterback to play with that. You get the ball out a little bit sooner. You anticipate a little bit better. The ball's in the air when a receiver comes out of his break. And those are not bad things. Those are good things. And that's what you develop if you don't have a gun for an arm. And that's one of the things that I've noticed in Cooper. If you watch him throw a 10-yard sideline route, that ball is in the air before the receiver turns and looks back, or a hook route, or a slant. That just gives the defensive back less time to react. So I think sometimes you can make an argument that having a weaker arm can almost be a positive.
And look, with Cooper Rush or whoever the Cowboys quarterback might wind up being, as long as the tragedies that befell them all at once last year don't happen again, i.e. the offensive line stays intact, Zeke Elliott, he looks a lot healthier and a lot quicker than he was last year, or I'd say in better shape, and he doesn't have fumbles, and you can run the offense through Zeke, that I don't really think that any backup quarterback would have the kind of problems that they had as soon as Dak got hurt last year, because, everything else would be there in place. What Andy Dalton unfortunately stepped into last year was just a hurricane of problems.
It's like, Paul, it's like I said earlier, there is no position in all of sport that is more dependent on the people around him than a quarterback on a football team. And, when you compare it to the basketball point guard, a pitcher in baseball, those guys, can operate pretty much independent of other people. But a quarterback on a football team cannot do anything by himself, nothing, especially win a football game. And even though he touches the ball on every play and everybody makes a big deal out of that, and he's also the only guy that makes decisions on a football field. But everybody else kind of has to do their job before he can do his. And I know I had kind of the best of both worlds when I played. For 3 or 4 years, I had inherited a Super Bowl team. We had a great offensive line, had Dorsett, Randy White, and too tall on defense. And then when those guys started getting replaced, they weren't replaced with the same level, same quality players as what we had. So early 80s, my job was easy. And I can remember thinking that, man, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. Stand back. I just got to keep everybody happy. I got to throw one to Drew. I got to throw one to Tony. I got to throw one to Doug. I got to Butch. I got to just keep them all happy and just distribute the ball rather than hoping that somebody gets open before the pass rush gets to me, which happened in the second half of the 80s. And man, that is no place for a quarterback to be. That is no fun. And so I've seen both sides of that. And I can tell you that all those other factors have to come into play. And when I backed up Roger and I came into games when he got hurt, everybody stepped it up. I could feel it. The guys in the huddle, they were pulling for me and they were, encouraging me. And that's the kind of stuff that has to happen for a backup quarterback to be successful.
You mentioned Roger. You had that experience of being the backup for him. How important is it? I know because it's not always this way, but beneficial, important is it for the quarterback room to be on the same page and to get along like you guys did?
I don't know, because I never had it the other way.
Yeah.
We got along so well, very similar lifestyles, similar priorities. Roger was a family guy, very religious guy. We just kind of meshed, and yet we were fiercely competitive. I've told the story of Roger and bench pressing, and we were kind of equal in terms of how much we could bench press. And we had gotten 290 pounds, but nobody had gotten 305, which was kind of the next level. And one day I got it, and there were not only a few of us there, Bob Ward, our conditioning coach, Roger, and it was a big deal. I came up when I got 305 up. I came up off that bench, and man, I was jumping up and down. I was cheering. First quarterback ever to bench press 305. And Roger doesn't say a word. He just walks into the training room, into the locker room. And I said, what, is he mad? What? And then he comes walking back out with a paper cup, a Coke cup. And he walks over to the bar, and, he had tried 305 dozens of times, and neither one of us had been able to get it. So he takes this cup, he breaks the bottom out of it, then he sticks it on the end of the barbell. And he gets down underneath it, and you can just see the determination in his face. And he bench presses 305 plus a paper cup. and he just beat me, I mean, he just took the record away from me. So I was Roger. That was us competing against each other, and having that relationship, working out together. We could never get Clint Longley to work out with us in the one off season that we had together, and I think that hurt Clint. Mm-hmm. Didn't hurt us. Roger and I we'd meet at the practice field at the same time. Clint would come at a different time. So yeah, I think it is important. You also hear stories about Joe Montana and Steve Young, that they didn't get along. I don't know if that makes it tougher. I would think it would. I would think that the relationship that I had with Roger was a definite advantage for me.
I love hearing stories about how competitive he is. David Smoke, my co-host, and you've been on our show before, but we were doing a Wounded Warriors Amputee Project game in Dallas, and we were helping promote that event and doing the PA for it. And Roger was playing in it, and he threw an interception to a guy, an amputee, and it was a legit interception. It was a guy with one arm picked off a pass. And Roger, at 70, almost 70 years old at the time, he was P.O.'d, Danny. I mean, he was mad, went off the sideline mad. And it was just kind of funny to see, hey, it's still, if this guy if he was not 70, he'd still be trying to do this, because that fire always burns in him.
Let me tell you, Paul, he right now, of all things, he is praying that my youngest son doesn't have another child. And the reason is we both have 15 grandchildren. And he doesn't want me to beat him. And that would just be one more thing. I could beat him at ping pong. I could beat certain things, and he just wouldn't play. If he didn't think he was going to win, he wouldn't play. Yeah. That's how much he hated losing. So, yeah, no question about it. I can see it. A one-armed guy picking off Roger, I would not want to be around him.
Took it to the house, too, so it made it even worse. I mean, it wasn't just like he picked it off and somebody grabbed his flag. Took it off right to the house. And wow. He came off the sideline. I was like, oh, my gosh, look at that. Yeah, that is more than anything I've ever seen on film or anything like that. That was it right there. I was smoking. I looked at each other going, man, he's not – I mean, we maybe need to get him a breather a second here before he goes back out there. But it was awesome to see. All right, the rest of the roster really came out kind of as expected, Danny, for the Cowboys. I would say that's a good thing that they didn't have a lot of surprises, or like last year, there's not a Ha-Ha Clinton Dix or a Don Terry Poe on the roster who. Don Terry Poe made it because almost out of necessity, but I mean, he's essentially not there when he was playing, and Ha-Ha Clinton Dix didn't even make it out of camp. Everything kind of worked out for them this year, decision-wise, that they made in the offseason.
Yeah, other than Neville Gallimore, they didn't lose a guy in the preseason. Now, I will say that there's a good side to that and a bad side, because the good side is nobody got hurt. The bad side is they're so conservative with playing players in the preseason. I think it was a mistake not to play Dak. I think it was a mistake not to play Zeke and Amari Moore and Tank Lawrence. And those guys need to, sooner or later you have to play the game. And football is unique in that you get hit, your body has to get conditioned and get used to getting hit and landing on the ground and getting up. And when you haven't done that and you're going out and doing it for the first time, and it's a live game with real bullets flying around and nobody taking it, that needed to happen in the preseason, in my opinion. And I think it was a mistake, especially for Dak, since he didn't play at all last year. Played the first 4 games, but. I really hope that it doesn't end up hurting him if his timing's off, if he's a little bit quicker to make a decision, to take a sack, to throw the ball away. I think it will. I don't know that we'll ever know that, whether it did or not, but I just think it was a mistake for those guys not to play in the preseason. But they did have a good year in that regard. And yeah, you're not having to play a guy like Don Terry Poe that just really killed them. They would have made the playoffs if they hadn't had Don Terry Poe on the roster to start the season, because he affected the linebackers and people around him in a negative way that cost them some games, in my opinion, that they otherwise would have won.
Yeah, Babe Laufenberg told me he was the first player he ever saw to retire during a play. That's how bad Don Terry Poe was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he not there.
He was out for Don Terry Poe. He got that contract, and he got, $3 million or whatever he got, and that's, other than that, he was going through the motions.
Yeah. You mentioned Dak not playing. You guys played 6 games in the preseason?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a pretty fair rotation. Roger played a lot, you played a lot. You didn't it wasn't 4 snaps and gone either, was it?
Oh, no. And the first year, it was just Roger and I, and then there were some younger guys, nobody that was drafted, that played some. I can't even remember who it was now. And then Glenn Carano came along, but there was never a game, I don't think, that Roger didn't play in at all, or that after Roger retired, that I didn't play in the preseason at all. I think we always played in all the games, even if it was just for a couple of series, we at least played.
Yeah, it's very different now. And of course, you've been to practice. I mean, it's not anything, I always, when I go to training camp and people ask me, how do the Cowboys look? I say, well, I mean, they can beat the Cowboys. That's all I've seen them do, because they don't really hit. They don't, it's all very different now. So it's hard to tell unless you watch it every single day, who's really coming along, because it's not what you're used to watching football practice.
Well, not only is practice different, the games are different. You can't, as long as they're in the pocket, you can't hit them below the waist. You can't hit them above the shoulders. You can't hit them with your helmet. You can't hit them in the helmet, obviously. That is so different. I want to go back. I want to rewind the clock and go back and play under these conditions, under these rules. And I think I could play for another 5 or 6 years, really and truly. And people ask me about how Tom Brady can play 20 years, and Drew Brees and these guys. Is it because they're just in better shape? Their diet is better. They've learned how to eat. Well, none of that is true. We worked out as hard as anybody and as hard as they do. And they may have their own personal individual trainers, but they don't work any harder than we did. The difference is the rules. And when you're not getting hit, just stay in the pocket. As long as you don't get outside the pocket and try to run. That's why guys, I think, like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, those guys are not going to play for 20 years in the league because they're outside the pocket too much.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly, it's a whole different game. I wonder how many different guys would love to have that rule. I mean, look, Roger, we just mentioned, that was a guy who had, who concussions, cost him his career. And still, like I told you, 70 years old, he's still a guy in great shape. So it wasn't like he was, he let himself go or anything like that. It was just the matter of the game and the way it was played back then. Yeah, you could have had more years out of almost anybody because of
and even to this day, Roger's in great shape. He's 80 years old, will be in February. So he's a guy that takes care of himself, and mostly he's got a wife that won't let him get out of shape. She's not going to let him die before she does. That's how Marianne is. She's probably as competitive as Roger is. Just nobody knows it.
Yeah. Last thing before we go, let's look ahead of the game a little bit next week, and we'll talk. We'll do a game preview next week. We're just going to release right before the game that you're doing next week with Tampa. They have not had, like you said, real live action, and this is a Bucs team that's got all 22 starters back. It never happens that way after the Super Bowl. They got in as a wild card last year and peaked in the playoffs and hit their stride. They're all back. Everybody's together. I mean, I know it's Tom Brady and he's 44 years old or whatever he is, but wouldn't it have been nice to see the guys, at least the first team offense, play together before they have to go and match with the Super Bowl champions?
Absolutely, Paul. I mean, that the single biggest complaint I have about the team this year so far, and I don't think that's Mike's decision. I think that's Jerry's decision, but I don't know that for a fact. But whoever makes that decision, I think it was a mistake to not have them all play in a game together, at least a quarter. And we got to see, and we made a big deal about the fact that in the third game, they started that. First off, was the first time the offensive line had all been together, but it's not the same without Dak in the huddle, without Zeke, without having all those guys in there. And if I was a betting man, I would bet that it's going to have an impact on the game on Thursday. The fact that they just have not played a single snap with all of them in the game together.
Yeah, I think so. Now, kind of my running joke of the Cowboys is that the moment that you think that they're like, oh, well, this is a bad matchup for them, they're not going to win this one, is when the lights come on. All of a sudden, they can roll it out and surprise you. But this is going in on a Thursday night to open the season when the banner's going up against Tom Brady, and you haven't played together. Just makes me so nervous because that place at Raymond James is going to be lit up. They are going to be ready to go.
Yeah, they will be. This is going to be a big deal. This might break all the ratings for a regular season game. I don't know if there's such a thing, but this is going to be a big game, and I'm fearful that the Cowboys are going to be kind of take the brunt of that attack. But I don't know. We'll see. I think play calling is going to be really important. They're going to have to get in and make sure they do things that's not going to plays that are easy to have success with. Run the football, short passes, and you say that about every game, but you don't have a Dak Prescott that's coming in full stride. You just don't. And I don't care how much money he makes, and how valuable he is to this team. He is not going to be 100% when they start the game. He just can't be. It's been too long since he's played, and you cannot duplicate game speed, even in a preseason game, but especially in practice. There's no way to duplicate game speed. The game of football is unique, again, and I keep saying this, but to any other, in that when the lights come on and there's live bullets and it's a real game, everything is a little bit faster than it was in practice, was in the preseason. And it's going to be really interesting, an interesting game to watch.
It is, and I wonder if, in fact, Dak, because of what you said, it might be the third or fourth game before we see Dak at 100% Dak, because
will be.
Yeah, he hasn't played, so yeah,
it definitely will be, and that's your preseason. That's why we had 6 games when I played, and now it's 3, and it'll end up being 2 or 1 very shortly, I'm sure. And I attribute that to owners who I don't think really understand the game and the demands of the game. They should play at least 2 games, and everybody should play, in my opinion, to really be ready for the regular season.
Yeah, they want national TV games that everybody sees every week, and the preseason's not making them as much TV money. That's what it's about. And if they could convert all of the preseason games to regular season games, they would do it. The Players Association is not going to let them do that. They might get away with 18,
but unless they're paying him a whole lot more money, and that's probably down the road, and then maybe a situation where a player can only play a certain number of games in a season, and you have 20 games, but a player can only play in 16 of them. I don't know, but something like that I think is in the future for the NFL.
All right, Danny, always enjoy it. We'll talk again next week when you will be in Tampa getting ready for that first game. It's 1 week away. I cannot wait for the season to start.
All right, Paul.
This is the Believe in the Cowboys podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network, brought to you by Bet Online. I'm Paul Catalina, alongside former Cowboys quarterback and punter Danny White. This is the Believe Podcast Network. Have a great week, everybody.